All right. I've been looking forward to this conversation because you and I have known each other for a while. We both grew up in Montreal, South Shore. We went to McGill at the same time. We even had some economics class together. We went to U of T after McGill at the same time. Since then, that was a long time ago, I became, I've had a career in journalism. You had a distinguished career in law at Steichen Elliott after U of T, where you were actually managing partner at the very old age of 36 years old, I think. After that, you joined BCE in 2004, where you ran regulatory affairs for the company. You were promoted to chief legal officer in 2012, as well as executive vice president for corporate strategy. You oversaw the company's acquisitions for 6 years or so. I think that included Astral Media and Manitoba Telecom. After that, you were promoted to chief operating officer. And then, since January 2020, just a few months before the pandemic, you became CEO and president of one of the country's most storied companies. So, Mirko, how do you like your job?
I love my job. So one of the reasons is, you just said it, right? It is one of the most storied companies in Canada and in the history of the country. And there's been actually very few individuals who've had the fortune, privilege, opportunity to do what I'm doing today. And if you really, what I say to our colleagues internally is never lose sight or forget what it is that we do every single day and what our mission is. And it's today the articulation of our mission today is advancing how Canadians connect with each other in the world. And it's always been about connections, and connections, they matter. They change everything. So we've been part of nation building in the country for 145 years. And what's really fun about it, Theo, you asked me how I that's part one of the answer. You asked me how I like my job. What's really fun is we're right now in the process of rejuvenating Bell, with energy. We're leaning in on the front foot to reposition ourselves to kind of help build the country again, for another 145 years using transformative technologies as they are today, and positioning ourselves to continue to help Canadians and the economy. So it's, when you kind of think about it in those terms, both kind of what we've been doing for over 100 years, how profound it is for Canadians and economically, like the kind of communications and connections, and then having the opportunity to reposition that again for the future, it's really, really cool and energizing.
So, those 145 years communications company, you're also now becoming a technology company, or do you see yourself as a technology company as well as a communications company?
Oh, we 100% do. I think if you go back at various points in time in Bell's history, it was, at once seen and perceived, rightfully so, as a massive Canadian innovator. Think of Bell Labs, think of Nortel sprung from Bell Labs in the BCE environment, and you think about the creation of BCE and how it actually built infrastructure in other parts of the world, from right here in Canada, in Montreal. It was a technology and innovation jewel. Of course, we've continued our mission, but I think part of that narrative has kind of eroded along the way, and we're taking it back, and we're taking it back again with a lot of energy and vigor. I hope we talk about it, but 2 weeks ago, I lose track of time now. Last week or 2 weeks ago, our very big announcement in Vancouver, the launch of Bell AI Fabric, the vision and the ambition to build kind of for Bell AI Fabric to be kind of the backbone of an AI ecosystem in Canada. That's ambitious. It's forward-looking. It's technology forward. AI is, without exaggeration, kind of the most transformative technology we've seen since the advent of the internet. So we're leaning into that. That's just a very practical, recent example of how we were positioning this company as a technology innovator.
Okay, and we're going to get to that.
Perfect.
Before we actually get to kind of what you're doing to grow I also I want to go through some of the headwinds that you're facing, because there are some significant headwinds. I would kind of breaking them down into three areas, and you can kind of add to that if you like. You have the kind of technology disruption, OTT, over-the-top providers like WhatsApp or Netflix. You have the regulatory kind of headwind, and you have the macro headwind, higher interest rates than you kind of experienced in the decade before the pandemic, for example, and slower growth. Which of those three headwinds would you say is the most serious? Or how would you rank them, or if you think it's even kind of the right way to think about it?
So you said, you had technology, you had regulatory, and your third?
Macro.
So look, you take all three. I'll give you a general answer before I get very specific. You take all three of those, and you could add other constraints, if you will, to that. But you take all three of those, and those are perfect examples of why it's so important at all times to be kind of aware of the environment around you and strategically position yourselves to be able to weather the storms or seize the opportunities. And that's why this moment in time of rejuvenating Bell is so critical and energizing, as I said. Like, it's pretty exciting because why are we repositioning / rejuvenating Bell? Because of the technological shift. Because of the competitive shift that comes with technology. Macro, you always have to deal with. You might have headwinds and tailwinds depending on the point in time. And regulatory, look, I mean, I think I give you a different regulatory answer on the communication side from the broadcasting side, and maybe we can get into that. But right now, I would say absolutely top of mind in terms of a critical headwind for the country, I think, for our industry and for us as well as part of the industry is, some of the regulatory decisions on the telecom side. On the technology side, I view, there have been competitive shifts that we've had to adjust to, but I see opportunity in those. In what you call a headwind, I actually see an opportunity. Regulatory on the communication side, it's a very significant constraint for the industry, in my view. And then macro, we're working through it. I think the macro environment's been difficult since COVID, actually.
That's right, well, especially for a capital-intensive business like yourself. Are you anticipating interest rates to continue to remain at current levels? Like, how do you see the macro economy? Are you anticipating kind of a status quo, relatively high interest rates, low growth macro environment for the years to come?
Yeah, I do see that, and I think maybe if we take like a very, very quick kind of 5-year view since I became CEO. So you had COVID with the obvious kind of contraction of the economy where everything stopped. So we had to adjust to that, and then we went into a period of supply chain disruption, which had a significant impacts. Then we went into a period of high interest rate, and when you're investing, our capex from 2020 to 2024 was that 5-year period of time. This company invested more than it ever had before in any 5-year period of time. So we were in a period of historic capital investments, and it was all designed to deliver more connectivity, 5G and fiber internet, to more locations in Canada faster than ever before. And then, interest rates kind of balloon, skyrocket. That has an impact on us. Obviously now we're in a period of lower interest rates compared to 2.5 years ago, but not as low as they were when we started our accelerator or historic capital investment program. So that has an impact that we've had to manage. And now with kind of the global trade disruption, trade wars, and the clampdown on newcomers to Canada, which was put in place last July, we've had a slowdown in demand based on those two factors, and so we've had to manage through that as well. So that would be on the kind of the macro side, but I'm expecting stable interest rates, but they're not going to be what they were back in 2020, right? 2019, 2018.
And on the regulatory side, the big concern for you is that CRTC mandate that mandates you to open up your fiber network to the large incumbents, not just the smaller players. Your concern is that actually not a concern. You've actually reduced your capex as a result, taken action. There is some concern out there that it could undermine investment in digital infrastructure, not just fiber, and other things, because it sets the precedent that if you invest in infrastructure, you don't know if that will be captured by regulators. So I know you've appealed the decision. Can you just kind of let us know where the process is? I know you've appealed it to cabinet, right?
Yeah, one of the regional cable companies, has appealed it to cabinet, and we've that decision of the CRTC, and we support that appeal. So I could talk about this for 2 hours, but I won't. But I think don't want to bore your audience or you, Theo, but it merits 2 minutes of unpacking, and I could do this quickly. In Canada, from a communications industry, public policy perspective, we have always had what's called facilities-based competition. And the idea is that you have policies that encourage each competitor to invest in their own networks, and that way you get more investment in Canada, more jobs in Canada, and each competitor tries to outdo the other by continuing to invest to get higher, better networks, more reliable networks, more resilient networks, faster speeds, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you do that, then your competitor has no choice but to actually invest in their own networks, otherwise they'll fall behind. And that's facilities-based competition. And it's evolved over time, but there was also a rule laid on top of that. Primary function is encourage investments in competing networks. A secondary element of that was you're only going to have 2 or 3 large players in that event, so you want to encourage more competitors, so you let small independents have access to the networks of the larger players at a regulated rate, so at least there's some price competition as well. So that would be, let's call that status quo, and that's fine with us. We think that that's the right approach. What's new now is that the regulators decided that not only should small independent companies have access to the networks of the large players, but the large players can access each other's networks. And so, to make it real, why would Bell bother building their own networks in rural Ontario if we can just ride on the network of a cable company that's already there? Why would we bother building in Western Canada if we can ride the network of the cable or fiber company that's already there? That does not encourage investment. And what's particularly alarming is, go back to kind of what I said 2 minutes ago, we've just gone through a period of investing over $20 billion, $23 billion actually, since 2020, the biggest amount that we've ever spent in this country over a 5-year period of time. And it was to deliver more broadband to more people than ever before. And it was largely one of the key factors to doing that was we were in COVID, and there was a big demand for better internet networks as a result of everyone being at home. So we do that. And then the regulator turns around and says, okay, now we'll give access to your large competitors who are well capitalized and can invest themselves. So the impact of that is already we've cut back on investment, because a rule like that fundamentally affects the return we can generate on the dollars we invest. And you've seen it across the industry, significant reductions in investment. Last thing I'll say on this is, Bell Canada is opposed to the rule because of what I just said. Cogeco, which is a regional cable company, has appealed to cabinet because it's against the rule. Eastlink, which is the cable company in Atlantic Canada, is opposed it. Quebecor in Quebec's opposed the rule. SaskTel in Saskatchewan. So almost every single stakeholder in the industry is against the rule. So where we are in the process, Theo, which is actually what you asked me, is Cogeco's appealed. Cabinet has until mid-August to rule and to decide whether or not the CRTC's decision makes sense or not. And the fundamental issue is, do we want to continue to build, connect, and grow Canada? If we do, we need more investment in networks. And if you want more investment in networks, we have to have facilities-based competition policies which actually encourage companies like Bell to continue to invest aggressively.
The CRTC has also this kind of promise, I guess, that there will be a 5-year grace period for new investments. I mean, why would that not be sufficient to deal with the issue?
It takes more. So first of all, that rule applies to if the CRTC's rule that you refer to is if we build in a community today, we'll have a 5-year grace period, but we just spent $23 billion, building to almost 4.5 million additional locations. So we have fiber available to 8 million customer homes and business locations today. We were less than 4 million in 2020. So we've gone on this massive building spree. We have not recouped those investments yet because those are nascent investments. It takes a number of years to kind of, quote unquote, in our terminology, fill the pipe to get the customers hooked to your network, connected to your network rather, and then generate a return over a long period of time. So, the 5-year rule is not long enough in its own right, and it doesn't address what's been built in the past, and we've already built 8 million locations.
Outside of the fiber network question, is there any other regulatory overhangs, whether it's spectrum or what other issues are you dealing with from a regulatory point of view that...
I would say I learned in this job over time with a bit more experience that you're always more effective in your communications when you keep your narrative kind of focused on what really matters. What really, really matters is overturning this decision, because this decision is the most impactful one in a negative way to investment in Canada at a moment in time that's critical for the country as we, and I'm just paying attention to the new government's agenda, which I do believe is the right one, diversify our economy, diversify our trading revenues, build an economy that's going to stand the test of time, that's going to be modernized, where we kind of take control of things and be less dependent on others. Like in that environment, the single biggest thing is to generate more investment in critical sectors of the economy. Clearly, communications is a critical sector of the economy. So to answer your question, the really big one is that one. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about a whole bunch of other regulatory rules. You can add them all together. They would not together have the same impact as this one.
Yeah. So what does good regulatory policy look like in this environment where everyone is trying to build out the digital infrastructure? What would you recommend? I mean, I know obviously there's a conflict of interest, but what if you try to put that aside? What would be good regulatory policy for digital infrastructure?
Yeah, I don't think there's a conflict of interest at all. Actually, I've been operating in the regulatory space in this industry since 2004, as you mentioned, in the industry. So I can give you kind of what I believe are good principles in regulation, and which would apply across many regulated sectors. So number one is encourage investment. And in our case, that means in facilities-based competition. The most durable, sustainable form of competition is through independent networks. That's where you have competition that lowers prices, that drives service innovation, and that creates resiliency, and resiliency is critical. So number one, encourage investment. You do that through facilities-based competition. 2, predictability. So just have predictability in your regulation. And then you need efficient regulation making. In other words, speed of decision making. So those are the 3 things that I would always push for.
Let's go to your growth strategy. I know you have these headwinds. You're trying to transform the company. Maybe you can just tell us kind of what your kind of I think you refer to them as your core kind of pillars.
The 4 strategic pillars or strategic priorities, and this is the fun part. It's where you see all kinds of opportunity over the short, medium, and long term. So it goes back to the very first question you asked me about liking my job. So we have 4 pillars. One is to put customers first. Easy to say, everyone says it, but you get that right, it's absolute magic. So we have a mantra, putting the customers first, and it comes with a lot of self as in corporate self, like not me necessarily, just me, but corporate reflection on we've stumbled, and at times I think frankly lost our way on that. So we're leaning in with a lot of intention. So putting customers first. The second one,
is that a customer experience or is that products or is that both?
It's customer experience end to end. It's from the service you deliver to how you deliver to how the after sales service to the billing, to how you treat the customer if they have an issue, digitally or when they call in. So I'd love to unpack all of that because it's so fundamental and so profound. So putting customers first. The second one is offering the best fiber, internet, and 5G services. So that's the second pillar. Clearly, it's what Bell would probably primarily be known for over 145 years. The connectivity and communications networks.
How is the 5G rollout coming anyway?
Great. Like we're at 87% of the population enabled with our 5G services. So think about back to investments. When I became CEO in 2020, we were in 4G. But there was no 5G in Canada. And now every provider is offering 5G services. So this is like a shout out to the entire industry. Like we lean in and we invest to serve Canadians. So 87% have access of Canadians have access to 5G, and I think it's well over 65% now have access to 5G plus, which is like the next evolution of 5G. So the second pillar is continuing to offer the very best in internet, and fiber is the best internet technology anywhere in the world, and we're really good at fiber. The third pillar would be unlocking value that we provide to our enterprise customers with AI-led technology services. And what's one sentence on that, what's super cool here is in the enterprise space, and this is not just a Bell phenomenon, it's you see this around the world. Large-scale communications companies have faced significant headwinds in the enterprise segment, and it's basically been a segment that's been in slow decline for years and years and years anywhere in the world. Large telecom companies who have a large installed base of enterprise customers have seen revenue and earnings declines. We've managed those declines rather well, but what's a lot of fun now is we're turning decline to growth. And we're turning decline to growth by leaning into new technology services and new technology solutions, a little bit back to the beginning of our conversation, going back to what we were, like that innovative technology company. And enterprise customers want those technology solutions, so they're buying. And then the fourth pillar was building a digital media and content powerhouse. And that goes back to kind of what we've been doing in Bell Media. And that's been a lot of fun too, because we've aggressively reshaped Bell Media from what was a traditional broadcaster to a digital media and content leader. And you're seeing it in the results. Like we are growing again, which is fun.
I want to
and it's hard to find a former traditional broadcaster who's managed to secure growth again.
So on the enterprise solutions part, I mean, this is why you've, gotten into the business of data centers. You just announced that recently.
AI centers.
AI centers, sorry.
Yeah.
What is the growth potential there? Like, how big of a market could enterprise solutions be for BCE or the telecom industry generally?
Yep. So on the enterprise side, think about it, Theo. Think about our enterprise business now as having kind of three key layers. So the first layer would be, providing network connectivity to small, medium, and large businesses, fiber internet, and 5G wireless, and that's been what's it would be the kind of the core business, but with modern network technologies. And we stabilized the declines there, and we're going to turn that back to growth by providing modern services like unified communications, UCaaS, unified communications as a service would be an example. I'll give you a practical new product launch. We've partnered with Zoom, called it Bell Zoom. We have a product called Workplace by Bell Zoom. And it's to provide a complete unified communications package. You get your internet, you get your phone service, you're online, you book meetings, etc. So that would be an example of taking the core business and modernizing it. You can also think about it as a network as a service. So that's the first layer. The second layer is we've now become a systems integrator, a managed services provider. And this is the newly launched business that we call Atteco. And Atteco stands for Automation Technology Collaboration, so Atteco. And what we do is, what Atteco does is it does for large enterprises what it's been doing for us. We take a legacy business with a lot of manual processes and a lot of disparate IT workflows and IT systems, and we modernize those and we make them work seamlessly. and there's a big demand for that. So that would be layer 2 of the enterprise business. And you asked me how is that growing? That's a $250 million business that we expect to be at least $1 billion by 2030. And then you have cyber. We provide cybersecurity services, and then the Bell AI Fabric. So I guess there's 4 layers. The Bell AI Fabric, that's potentially a business. I mean, that's I'm not going to size it, Theo, but the growth potential in the AI Fabric, which is the AI data centers across the country to form the backbone of an ecosystem for Canada, is significant.
And do you see yourself as competing with the hyperscalers, or is that?
No, that's not the idea. The idea is to provide sovereign AI centers in Canada so that Canada as an economy can be in control of its own AI destiny. So we're talking here about land, building, low-cost sustainable energy to power the data centers, connectivity. You need fiber connectivity. And then in the centers, you would obviously have either GPU or LPU, so kind of the chips that power AI models. And then, cloud infrastructure and AI advisory services would form part of the package of what we offer to customers. So what I say when some people ask me similar questions is we're not in a position in this country, at least not yet for the foreseeable future, hopefully one day we will, but to displace global technologies. The large language models that are out there, NVIDIA chips, Gluch inferencing chips, they are the leaders in each, I've given you several examples of leading technology in their respective segments that come from elsewhere. So we need to adopt and employ and utilize globally leading technologies, but the key is having that controlled and operated and resident in Canada, so no one could ever turn Canada off because you have Canadian companies who are operating these data centers, and you're enabling an innovation ecosystem from within those centers. Like, so you can have researchers utilize, the technologies that we've embedded in our AI data centers. You can have startups utilizing it, and then that feeds on itself and creates its own ecosystem. So that's the idea behind Bell AI Fabric, and hence the name.
I actually want to ask you a few questions, kind of macro questions in the economy. But before I do that, what is the future of Bell Media, and in terms of growth, what are your expectations there, and what role will news play in that growth?
Great question. So, very exciting future and promising future for Bell Media, and we made a lot of difficult decisions over the last 3-4 years, and it was that hard work that required us to really change our approach to doing business in the media sector. And in many respects, some of the cultural elements of it internally, to go from traditional broadcasting to digital media leadership, it's working. In Q1 of this year, Bell Media was the best performing business unit within BCE, believe it or not. This is coming from, and it wasn't just a Bell Media thing, but globally, the traditional media ecosystem has gone through some hard times. So we saw that. We obviously experienced it. We knew it wasn't going to change. So we set about changing how we do business. And so the pillars of growth are premium entertainment. Think of Crave. Crave is on fire. It is growing. It has secured well more than 1 million subscribers over the last 15 months. That's an astonishing level of growth. Love it. So premium content at Crave. Sports is the other key pillar. So TSN and RDS delivered however you want to view sports, through the app or the traditional way, and news. That would be the third key pillar. But on the news front, here's what's super interesting and super exciting. You think of CTV News as the traditional news ecosystem or delivery of news in the traditional way. We are now the #1 digital news publisher in Canada. And then we've come from nowhere to #1 in a very short period of time because of the vision, the culture, the leadership over there, and the desire of the team to just win. So it's fun. So the growth is there, and it's going to continue.
And even on the news side, do you expect?
Oh yeah. I mean, Canadians want their news from trusted news sources, and they want to get the news delivered to them at all times of the day as the news breaks. So that was the key part about shifting to digital. So if you're able to deliver high quality, trusted news at all times of the day on any platform that the Canadian viewer wants, given the trust that people have in CTV News, it's there for us. It's just there for us to win.
I want to get into a few questions on the economy before we conclude our conversation. Bell has millions of customers. You are also on the board of Royal Bank of Canada, the largest bank in Canada. So you have, I guess, a really good vantage point or viewpoint of the Canadian consumer. How is the Canadian consumer doing? How is the economy through the consumer's eyes?
I think the consumer is being appropriately cautious. I think generally speaking, this is a big generalization, but fairly still resilient, but appropriately cautious. So I think we're going to continue to feel that caution in our space at Bell for a little bit of time, but it's okay. You see things like bad debt rising a little bit across the industry, across most sectors of the economy. I think you see fraud moving up, and I think that's a bit of an indicator there. And on the enterprise side, because we also have a lot of enterprise demand, it's okay, it's good actually, but we're monitoring very closely to see if companies are going to cancel projects or delay projects or extend the timeline over which projects are implemented in order to smooth out kind of spend on the IT side in particular. But so far it's been pretty good, at least for us, because we're in high growth mode. And I'd say one thing back on the consumer space for us, the biggest impact on demand, and demand has come down in our industry for internet and wireless, and it's less about caution because of the macroeconomic situation and far more about the policy change last year to reduce the number of newcomers coming into Canada. Because if you have fewer newcomers and you have significantly fewer newcomers coming in, you're selling less wireless services because every newcomer needs a wireless phone and every newcomer has a home of some kind, rental or temporary or permanent, which requires an internet connection. So, that factor has reduced demand in our industry for broadband internet and for wireless.
On the labor market side, what are you seeing as a major employer in Canada on the labor market, in the labor market, and in particular on the specialized side of the labor market, the talent side? Are you, especially now that you're going into more technology endeavors, are you struggling to find talent? What's the labor market looking like?
I think our kind of labor profile has shifted, as you said, kind of from kind of legacy skills to software development, AI, IT. That's where our demand has shifted, and on that front, I think far more stable than we saw when we were in the midst of COVID, when there was certainly a seller's market from a labor perspective. That has significantly stabilized. So I think for us it's good. And back to, I think people are feeling and are seeing the energy that Bell has and how we're repositioning ourselves, and people want to come work for us. And particularly out of school, we've done really well. We have a award-winning new grad program, so we are able to secure top talent coming out of the universities, which is pretty exciting. And when you see these folks come in, they have a lot of ideas. They're quite innovative, a lot of energy and desire to win, and we're going to keep hiring people right out of school.
And on the business investment side, outside of regulatory, I mean, we talked about the regulatory issues, but Prime Minister Mark Carney has been talking about catalyzing private investment, an investment-first kind of agenda. I mean, do you think corporate Canada is ready for that? Do you think, or what do you think, in addition, just put aside the regulatory issues you're facing generally, corporate Canada, what issues do you think need to be addressed before corporate Canada really steps up on the investment side?
Well, I think the new government's agenda and the Prime Minister's agenda is bang on what this country needs. So I think the business sector in Canada is listening very carefully, and I would hope, can't help but agree that it's the right thing. Certainly from our perspective, we've always invested here. We've invested massively here. I challenge you to find, more than a handful of companies in this country who have invested as much as Bell Canada, BCE has over the past 5 years, well over $23 billion. We want to continue to do that. And what we build is a critical enabler to catalyze the economy, in the words of the Prime Minister, and that's what we want to keep doing. We want to build more fiber. I've talked about, and proudly talk about, all the fiber we've built with 8 million locations passed. Where we operate today, Theo, we still have over 4 million locations that don't have fiber. We want to connect those locations with fiber. We want to have more 5G plus in Canada. We're leaning in with Bell AI Fabric. We're heavily leaning into partnerships and investment in the IT space to serve large enterprises with our TechCo services under that new division. So all those things that I talked about, they're all AI-led in most respects. And every sector of the economy needs what we provide in order to grow themselves. And if and it's an ecosystem, it's a flywheel. And if, as the Prime Minister says, we encourage investment in the country through the right policies and through stability and predictability, we will get that flywheel going.
All right, great. Well, Mirko, thank you for joining us.
This one's already done.
It's already done.
Enjoy the conversation. Thanks, Theo.